And welcome back. It is the Wednesday edition of First News here on the 26th of June, 20 minutes in front of 8 o'clock. And yes, it is time for the Opportunity Arkansas segment as the CEO and founder of Opportunity Arkansas joins us, and Nic Horton. And Nick, welcome back to the show. How are you this morning?
It's good to be with you as always. I like that new bumper.
You like that? You got yourself your own open. You're part of the show now. You're part of the squad. In fact, last week, Thursday, you were sitting in for Brad, did a whole 4-hour show here on the radio station. Was that an enjoyable experience for you?
We might have had just a little bit of fun. It was pretty enjoyable. So I appreciate the chance to do that.
You did a great job, and we'll definitely have you back. So, Nick, of course, right after you hosted the show, the very next day, we ended the week on an incredibly bad note with the mass shooting in Fordyce, and we've all had a few days now to digest what happened and kind of get that recovery process started. And a lot of people want to talk about gun control and things like that. But what have been your feelings about this senseless killing in our state that obviously the whole state's dealing with at this point?
It was gut-wrenching news. It was heartbreaking. I mean, as a dad, seeing stories of this young lady who was a nurse that was trying to help people recover, that had young kids, now passed away. Seeing a young lady on the TV news talking about her dad who went back in to try to help save people that have now passed away. It was just absolutely gut-wrenching and a really devastating day for our state. But I think, Toby, I just have to say, while so many of us were processing and grieving and trying to wrap our heads around what happened, I found it frankly disgusting and despicable. I don't know how else to say it, that we had some Democrat, far left state legislators who were out within minutes, within hours, were out issuing calls for more gun control and frankly lying to Arkansans and saying, this could have been prevented. This could have been stopped. This is why we need more gun control. I mean, this was a deranged lunatic with a shotgun.
Yeah.
Do they actually expect Arkansans to believe? And by the way, they've told us for decades they're fine with hunting, right? We're fine with hunting. It's just the scary guns that we don't like. But shotguns and rifles, they're fine. Well, now they want to come for shotguns. It's disgusting to me to think about the victims. I mean, consider that some of the families of these victims may not have even been notified yet, and we have state officials out saying, well, this could have been prevented if we just passed a different law. It could have been stopped. Right. I think it's disgusting, and they should be embarrassed by their conduct.
Well, we were talking with Representative Crawford earlier this week, and I thought he kind of hit the nail on the head that this is a mental health issue, and that it should be addressed in that form. And I thought that was pretty powerful. And then obviously you've got the Surgeon General who came out and said gun violence is creating the mental health issues in our country. Didn't even mention social media or a bunch of the fact that kids sit isolated in rooms all day playing video games. Didn't speak to that at all. And so I thought that was kind of a bogus advisory as well from the Surgeon General. Of course, that was not generated by the Fordyce shooting, but definitely meant a lot. It weighed a lot more as we heard it.
Yeah, imagine, Toby, like when we had these tornadoes in Northwest Arkansas or the tornadoes in Little Rock last year. I mean, imagine if within hours of those happening, the dust hadn't even settled, the rubble hasn't even been cleared. We're still looking for survivors. Imagine if we had far-left Democrat legislators going out and saying, well, this is why we need a carbon tax, and this is why we need everybody to stop driving SUVs and eating beef, and they need to eat cockroaches and drive bicycles instead, because clearly this is, global warming is killing everyone. Yeah. I mean, imagine that's the equivalent of this. And these tragedies are horrific, but they're not preventable with a piece of paper that says, thou shalt not kill. We do have that written down. It's called the Ten Commandments.
Yep.
But yet here we go. Like, it still happens. And people, you've heard it all. We've all, seen the examples and seen other stories of, we had a guy right here in Conway where I live several years ago, strangled his girlfriend with a curling iron.
Right.
Okay. Should we ban curling irons? Should we ban extension cords? I mean, human nature, human behavior, unfortunately, this is all just a symptom of a fallen, broken world, and we hate it, and we should grieve, and we should talk about, as you said, the actual issues, which are mental health and some of these problems, but that's never going to happen
Yeah.
as long as people try to exploit these tragedies.
Yeah, it's the conversations that people don't want to have. As we're talking with Nic Horton, who is the CEO and founder of Opportunity Arkansas. And of course, this is the Opportunity Arkansas segment. And Nick, I want to turn to a brighter note. The governor sent out a press release yesterday saying that $10 million in bonuses is going out to some 3,000 teachers in Arkansas this week. And so, do we know how you qualified for a bonus or how this is distributed? Who gets $10,000? Who gets $1,500? Do we know how that breaks down at all, or how that works?
Yeah, the governor's office and Department of Education have released some of the criteria that they've used to determine those bonuses based on school district ratings and academic performance, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But I want to just say, I think this is really, frankly, exciting news that we are now in a place where we're rewarding our really good teachers above and beyond. We're already now the number one state in the country for starting teacher pay.
Right.
And every teacher in the state of Arkansas last year got at least a minimum $2,000 raise. But now we're doing things, frankly, it makes you wonder why it took us 150 years to start doing this. But now we're actually paying teachers and rewarding them based on performance, just like every other sector of the economy and the world that we live in. And that's exactly the way that it should be. This is not one of the most highly talked about parts of the LEARNS Act. Probably, I can speculate as to why, but this is a core component of it, and I think it's really, really good policy, and it's good. It's a good thing for our state.
Yeah, well, and it will invigorate. 3,000 teachers will get a bonus that they didn't even expect to come in, and that that as just someone in the workforce, that energizes you. And that gets you re-energized to go back and do a good job. And so that I think that's an important aspect of it as well. Nick, I wanted to dig a little deeper today into the Education Rights Amendment that they're out collecting signatures for, trying to get it on the November ballot. And the first thing, do we have any update on the signatures? Do we know if it's close to getting on the ballot? Because I believe the deadline's coming up pretty soon.
The deadline is coming up pretty soon. It's a week from Friday, so July 5th is the deadline for them to turn in the signatures. It's tough to say. We don't get like an actual live ongoing count from the Secretary of State or anything like that. Mm-hmm. You have to kind of take the other side's word for it, which, is maybe not always advisable based on like how they're describing the amendment to the public. But if you take their word for it, they were quoted in the newspaper a couple weeks ago saying they were somewhere in the vicinity of 55,000 to 60,000 signatures, but they always kind of throw out this caveat that, but there's a lot more out there that we haven't counted yet. Right. So we don't really know for sure. They've got to get to roughly 90,000 signatures, and if we take them at their word, it sounds like they're significantly behind where they should be. And I did find it really funny that last week, with 3 weeks to go before the ballot filing deadline, they're out at the state capitol testifying against the non-binding resolution and losing their minds about a legislative maneuver to try to say, hey, we think this is a bad amendment. But that right there sort of tells you that I think they're a little, well, they're not a little, they're very disorganized and they're very disjointed, and maybe they're going to come in with 75,000 signatures, maybe, but at this point I'll be stunned if they somehow get this thing on the ballot.
And then just a few questions here about what's in this amendment. And I think one of the top questions for me is if this were to go to the November ballot and say it even passed, what would it cost to institute what is in what the amendment is talking about doing? What's the cost to you and me as taxpayers?
That's a great question. Opportunity Arkansas, we have actually released the only cost estimates at all that have been published on this thing. Mm-hmm. The other side continues to say, and even said at the legislature last week, well, we're working on it. We've got a team of economists. They're working on it. They're putting some studies together. But what I can tell you for sure, is that the returns will be 9-1, which I find, frankly, hysterical, because what they're saying, when you think about it, is, well, I can't tell you what the one is, right? I can't tell you what the cost will be, but I can tell you for sure that whatever that one is, you can multiply it by 9, and that's the return on investment that taxpayers are going to get. Reality is they have no idea, and frankly, our estimates, as we admitted when we published them, they are very rough estimates. Yeah. And they only include numbers for 5 new welfare programs that would be created. Wow. But based on those 3 programs, and based on just a 20% take-up rate, which could be way low, 20% participation rate, it's a minimum of $1 billion a year, which in the state of Arkansas, anywhere that's a lot of money. But in a state like Arkansas, with the budget that we have and the population that we have, that is a massive amount of money.
I know one other thing I wanted to ask you on the way out here. I know your organization posted that it would end education freedom. And so what does that exactly mean?
Yeah. Well, look, real simple. And this is something that they're now playing defense on and, frankly, just, again, lying to the public about. But a big part of this amendment that they are misleading the public about and saying, well, this is just about creating fairness and it's just about creating standards and equality between private schools and public schools. But the reality is what the amendment would do if it were to become part of the state constitution is it would force any private school that doesn't, not just the EFA program, not just the LEARNS Act Education Freedom Program, but any form of taxpayer-funded scholarship, tax credit-funded scholarship, including the PAC program, which is for kids with disabilities, any type of education freedom program where any taxpayer dollars help low-income families or otherwise offset the cost of their private education, that would trigger basically a government takeover of private schools that would be impossible for private schools to comply with. The other side knows this. It's the entire point of the amendment is that they would take this tangled web of government state regulations and impose them on private schools. And private schools would have to do crazy things that they can't possibly do, such as hire superintendents, form school districts,
right.
All of these onerous regulations that were never intended to apply to private schools, and they flip it around on you. Like, well, Nick, you don't want fairness, you don't want equality, you don't want private schools to have standards. Private schools have plenty of standards. That's one reason why many of these private schools have waiting lists to get into, because the academic standards and performance is so high. So it's not about not wanting them to have standards. It's actually the opposite. It's about wanting to let them innovate and do what they do best and have competition between charter schools and public schools and private schools and home schools, and let parents in Arkansans decide where they want to send their kids. But making a state takeover of private schools, it's not even possible for these schools to try to comply with. And so as a result, they would have to opt out of the education freedom program, and the program would go away. Full stop.
Yeah, no, that's that would not be a beneficial thing for our state. Of course, you can see Nick and Opportunity Arkansas's work at opportunityarkansas.org. That's the website. Nick, we always appreciate the time, and we'll do it again next week. But thanks for coming on the show this morning.
Hey, I can't wait. Let's talk again soon.
All right, there goes Nic Horton from Opportunity Arkansas and opportunityarkansas.org. Jay, we'll just go right to commercials at this point, as I went very long with that interview, but I thought it was very good information that everybody needed to hear. And so glad we could get that out there to everybody. But we'll be right back. It's First News here on News Radio 102.9 KARN.